welcome to this webinar. It's my very first one, so bear with me. And I'm going to present the financial reporting matrix. And but before that, I'm going to introduce myself. So my name is Anders Ono. I'm Norwegian, but the common pronunciation is usually Anders Ono. I'm the product manager for Power BI Visuals at Profitbase. And Profitbase is a Norwegian software company with 30 years experience making state-of-the-art enterprise performance management software. That consists mainly of forecasting, consolidation, risk management, and now recently also Power BI Visual. And the financial reporting matrix, we started making this because we tried to make financial reporting in Power BI with the native visuals, and we couldn't do it. We got the numbers in, but it didn't look like a financial report. It didn't feel like one, and it was hard to do. And it wasn't as flexible when it came to styling and formatting. So we took it upon ourselves to create a visual to make it possible, or at least easy, without knowing a ton of DAX. So the first version was publicly available in 2019. And it got a really good response from the community. So we decided to continue developing this as a standalone product. But to continue developing, we needed some income to support that development. And that's when we released premium versions, premium features in 2020. So you still find the visual with a lot of free features, but every new feature we add as continued development is going to be under the premium feature kind of umbrella. And we currently have paying customers in 42 countries, but we have users of the visual using the free version in almost everywhere. So and that's why these webinars and my YouTube videos are in English, because we have to address everyone. And so why this webinar? 5 tips for making financial statements more appealing. Well, first of all, looks matter. When you present something, people who are the end user of the report wants to see something they're familiar with. So I've had a lot of meetings with customers and people I'm doing demos for, where they have been tasked with creating financial reports in Power BI to replace the old Excel reports. And when they present their first drafts using native visuals, they usually get a response along the lines of, this doesn't look anything like the old report I had in Excel. So the end user isn't happy because he doesn't know how to read the report. It doesn't look the same. So looks matter. And the second part is that people usually scan through a text before they read. And where should they focus? So by applying style, applying colors and formatting, you can help readers to know where to look. And the focus is usually drawn to anything that sticks out. So any bold or font with some specific color, it's going to draw attention. And smarter people than me have done research on this. So 2 Swedes did some research on how people read newspapers. And I didn't read the whole thing. I read the summary, the headlines, and looked at the pictures. But what I got from it was people scan for headers, fact boxes, which are usually bold, pictures and text in color. They avoid big bulks of text because it's scaring people off. So basically, readers read newspapers the same way I read this article. And this can also be, this will also hold true for financial reports. Sorry about that. I'm gonna have to just change window for a second because everything was layering on top of each other. Share screen. Yeah. So how does this apply to financial reports? Well, this is something I found Googling financial balance sheet Coca-Cola. And this is the first half of their balance sheet showing their assets. Now, this contains part of what we're looking for. It contains headers, which are bolded out to create some space. They've added some blank rows to avoid big bulks of text. So instead of all of this listed in one big bulk, it's kind of split into sections. So it's easier to navigate and see where to focus. Using over and underlines in color to frame in the most important rows. And well, they don't use a lot of color, but I'm going to add some to my report. So in this demo, I'm going to go from this in Power BI, and I'm going to insert rows as headers. I'm going to break it up into sections so it's easier to see what goes where and how this kind of goes together. I'm going to apply row styles with different colors and font sizes. I'm going to use margins and paddings to also expand some of the air around it. And I'm going to use outlines and separator lines to make it better. So this is going to be what we end up with. And also, I'm adding conditional formatting. So if the balance check at the bottom here isn't 0, it doesn't balance out. You get some warning in red and your focus is automatically drawn down to that. So then I'm going to go over to Power BI. Let's see. So this is my starting point. And if you click on the meatballs in the top right and edit, you can start here building out your report. So you could add a row after, and you can write a header text for that. And in the formula, you can just select the ones you want to add up to this subtotal. The style subtotal is automatically applied when you create a new row like this. And that style can later be defined and specified in the format pane down here, along with 12 styles in total. And then if we go down to this one, I'm just going to add a couple more of these. These are my total current assets, and that should be the result of the sum of these. And then I'm going to do one last one, which is the sum of those, which are my total assets. So I'm going to add up these two. And I want to style this differently. So I'm going to select total for that. And now they look the same, but they've been tagged differently. And so in the next part, I'm going to go in and style them to differentiate them a bit. But before I do that, I'm going to jump over to my pre-made slide where I've built out all of this. So you don't see me repeating, just adding in a lot of rows and formulas. And here we have kind of the full structure in one big bulk. So now it's easy to see what's sum or a result of other rows, but it's not easy to see how this fits together. So what I'm going to do is go back into the meatballs menu and edit. And I'm going to start here by adding a new row and just call that my assets. And no formula for that, but I want to apply a style, underline. And I want to go down after my assets and add a new row and then a second one. And this part is going to be my equity and liability. And that's also going to be an underline. So then I've sectioned up my full text with two different sections, one for my assets, one for my equity and liability. And now we can go in and change the styling for these. So if we start with the underline one, I want this to be bright. I want it to be big. And I want it to be bold. So you clearly see what you're looking at here. And then I want to differentiate between subtotals and totals. So that becomes more distinct. So I'm going to start with my totals and apply a background color. And it's not going to be bright orange like in the video, but blue like this. And I also want to add top and bottom outlines. And some outline colors as well, just to frame it in a bit. So now we have two focal points with color and bold text and outlines. So it's clear that these are the most important ones in this report. And we can also go to our subtotals. That's all of these other that are the sum of everything above them. And in here, I want to also add an outline at the bottom. So it's easier to see where a sum starts and where it stops. And at the same time, I want to add some margins. And now if I exaggerate this a bit, I'm adding a margin of 20. You can see each of these subtotals now have 20 pixels of air above and below. And this is way too much, but it's just to clearly show you what's happening. Because if I go down to 2 and 3 pixels, you still get some air around it, but it's not that easy to see what's happening. But that's how you can use margins as well to make them stand out a bit more and give them some air, so it's not one big bulk of text. And finally, the balance check down here. This is just checking that my total equity and liability equals my total assets. So this should always balance out to 0 when you're looking at a balance sheet like this. And I want that to stand out a bit as well. So I'm going to use the same bright green color. And now it's also kind of a focal point, and you can quickly see that everything here is fine. However, should there be anything wrong, so if I now filter out only one company, then I know this won't balance out. Then we see that it turns red. And that's because I've added a condition in edit mode that I've applied to that row, where I'm saying if any value on this row is different from 0, I want to apply a specific style. And that style has then been defined like this. So we have some font colors and you can also increase the text size to make it pop a bit more. Because when you see this, you know something's wrong, you have to check it out, you have to fix it. But if you look at this, everything is fine, you can move on. And you can also add in separator lines, which goes vertically. It doesn't make that much sense in the balance sheet when you look at it year by year. But if you jump over to something like an income statement, where you might have actuals, budgets, a variance, and then a variance in percent, you could add in a separator line after the last measure. Like I've done here, I have 4 measures. I've added in a separator line on the last one. And that tells the reader that this is kind of where 2019 ends and you start on a new year. You can also add separator lines on both sides of a measure or on one side of every measure. So that's up to you how you want to use it. And finally, I'll show you one more thing. If we add in more levels to the rows, you can start expanding and look at the breakdown of these different totals. So how they're kind of broken down into different accounts. And a cool new feature that's coming out in the next version is that you can right click over here and update all row styles. So you can say that everything should have a specific style. So let's say custom 4. I'm gonna change the styling of that to a light gray. Now everything is light gray. That's not what I wanted, but if I in the condition add in something like row level, it has to be greater than 0 for this to apply. Then it means it has to be, this is level 0, this is greater than 0. So now if I expand, you can clearly see that this is what's expanded, and this is what I expanded. So instead of not knowing what's accounts, what are kind of the top level, now you can clearly see what's what, which I think is a very neat feature. And then that's mainly what I wanted to show of these features. It's very simple. If you've used visual before, you might know most of this. But I just wanted to start with something easy that most people could follow. And I promise it would be as easy that anyone can do it. And I hope I delivered on that. And then you can do a lot more interesting things as well. You can add in icons depending on variance values. So if they're negative variance, you could have a negative icon. And this gets a bit tricky because if you have a negative variance on your sales, it means you sold less than you expected to. So that's a bad thing. But if you spent less on your expenses side, so here we spent less on cost of goods than expected, it's also a negative variance, but this is a good kind. So even though it's a negative number, it should be presented as a positive value or a positive addition to your bottom line. And I'm thinking this could be a follow-up webinar if you're interested in seeing how we set this up. You can also see that we can add different headers, colors for different measures we have. So each of these can be specified with a lot of styling, font colors, background colors, font size, and so on. But for now, that's actually what I wanted to share. And sorry, one more thing. Now I went through here and I changed all of these manually. So I went into each of these styles and I added different colors. And if I do it in this visual, it's not going to be applied to the visuals on the other report pages. So you have to kind of repeat the same thing over and over. But if I just reset these to default, just stay with me for a second more. You can reset. I'll reset most of these like this. You can import a theme file. And if I browse for themes and I pick this one, you can, in the theme file, you can specify how each and every one of these styling properties in our visual should look. So now in that file, I have a pre-made setup for how my totals should be defined, my subtotals and every other style, but also my column headers, which font colors they should have, and their size and the margins and everything can be put into one theme file. So if you make it once there, you can reuse it, and that's going to be applied to every visual on every page in your reports. So that makes it a lot easier to get the right consistency across every report. After this is done, we're going to send out this Power BI file with the theme file. So you can kind of take a look at those two side by side if you're interested and kind of pick them apart. So hopefully you can look at this and get some ideas on how to use it in your work. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the questions. Let's see if I can find the chat again. Will you advise on premium features? Everything I showed today in the first demo, building the balance sheets and everything there, is free features. Adding in icons means you need to add in custom columns, which is a feature, a premium feature. So that would require a license. How can I make a column larger? Well, I can share that. If you, for each measure you have, you can set different parameters under column style. So if you expand this, you'll have one section here for your actuals measure. That's the only one I have in here right now. And the first field there is the column width in pixels. So now it's 200. Now each of them is 50 and so on. This first field is only for the row headers. So if I put this at 600, it gets very wide. I think the default is 150, which usually is too narrow. So I'm usually putting it somewhere around 300 to 350. If I, well, 1200 is at least way too big. There we go. If you go to an income statement where I have 4 visuals, no, sorry, 4 measures and column styles, you'll see there is one part for actual and one for budgets. And then it's gonna, the menu is gonna repeat itself for each measure you have in there. So let's see, sorry. What are the rules regarding non-commercial licensing? We used by private persons or non-profit organizations. Well, for private persons, we charge normal licensing fees. For non-profit, we usually give a discount, but we don't have fixed discounts for every. So you just have to get in touch and we'll figure something out. Yeah, I forgot one thing. We could, while I'll just read through these questions, we could run a webinar or a poll on what the next webinar should be on or what you're interested in seeing. So I would ask if you could answer on that poll. And if you don't see, sorry, if you don't see something you like on that list, feel free to add it to the comments field and we'll take that into consideration as well. And so here it is. And I'm able to answer myself. So now while we wait, I'm just going to go through and look at some of these questions. Maybe next webinar, I can show how I built the financial statement step by step. Yeah, it would be a longer one and more detailed, but it might be interesting. How to add separator lines. So let's see. Now I'm in an income statement where I have multiple measures. Oh, I just got the results back from the poll, and most of you want to see both. So maybe we'll see you again. In here, we have 4 measures. If I go to the format pane and column styles again, for each of the measures, you have a separator. So here you can select where you want them. Now I'm selecting for actuals. I want separators on my right side of my actuals. So now it's over there. And I can also set the color for that. So I can make it match whatever's on my font color or any other color that I want. And if you have a kind of a year on top, let's see if I can do that as well. So time here. Okay, that didn't work out great. If we go to this one, here we have year on top, and I have in that same settings, column style, and here it's on my variance percentage down here. I have a separator line on my right side, so it's going to be on the right of every instance of that measure. So it's going to be repeating for every year or everything that you put on your columns, right? Let's see. Can you repeat the parts to format a font color for a single account, please? Yeah. If you click on the meatballs, which are now on the bottom because there wasn't room at the top. If you want to update the style on a single account, you can expand and find that account. So for instance, this one, right click, update row style. And then you can add a condition or not, and then you can just select which style you want to apply. So if I apply underline for that one, it's gonna take the same formatting that's been defined at style underline. If you want to highlight everything on a certain level, you can do this on the next version. This isn't out yet. This is a beta, but this is going to be released hopefully this week. Update all row styles and select one. Now that looks terrible. That looks worse. There we go. Yeah. Custom 2. Now everything is highlighted, but in the condition, you can specify which row level you want to apply this formatting on. So everything here on my top level is level 0, and everything one step down is level 1. And if you have multiple levels, it's 2, 3, and 4, and so on. So I can type in row level greater than 0, then it should be applied the style that I set over here. See. And yeah, we're going to get a recording of this webinar after. So you can take a look at this as many times as you want, as many times as you can. And can you repeat, how do you save the format of the table? Well, in the theme file I'm going to send you, it's going to look something like this. If I go down a little bit and zoom in, you'll see this part says styles total. So that's how you define the style called total in the visual. And then you have one field for each of the properties. So in here, you can specify true or false if you want it to be bold. You can specify font size. You can specify a background color or a font color. And if it stays at some color, it's just not defined. So it doesn't really do anything. But if you define a color like this with a hex code, it's going to be applied once you import this theme to the report itself. And you also see outline where you want them, the outline thickness, color of the outline, and also margins. Sorry. Okay, I'll repeat that. Here, we have one part for each style, and they contain the same information. So this is for the total style, and you have a bold that you can set true or false, and then italic, font size, and so on. So each of these fields are matching whatever you can see inside one of these. So all these can be predefined in this theme template for all of the styles, and also the column headers, and a lot of the features that we have where you can specify colors and fonts and so on. And if you import that as a theme using this one and browse for themes, it's going to be applied to the report. There's a question on, sorry, how you can change number formatting in the visual from US English to Dutch with comma as decimal separator. I will have to check that out after. I can get in touch with you about that one and send it to anyone if necessary. We also have a GitHub page. We'll send a link to that, but that's where you can find the documentation and support. You can ask questions and answers. And if you have issues or things you're wondering, you can also post that there. I will. So it's easier for more of, or all of you, all of our users can then take a look at the same question, right? Can you show how to insert or delete one row or column? Yeah. Okay. We're now in edit mode. And if you want to remove budget for 2019, because you're not interested in that anymore, but you want it for the rest of the years, you can right click that and hide it. And then you can still see it here. So it's just grayed out, but if you go back to the reports, it's going to be hidden. Now you can also see this watermark appeared because I now added a feature. The hide feature is a premium feature. Then you get this. So now once the report is finished rendering, you can see budget is gone for 2019, but it's showing for the rest of the periods. I go back in to edit mode and I want to kind of regret that, I can select that step and just delete it, and then it's back in. So going back to the report is going to be showing as normal. And if you want to insert, it's the same thing. So if I go in here, I can right click based on where I want the column to be, and you can add a column before or after. And that's going to be specifically placed based on what you select as a starting point. So if I select the variance AB, I select after, it's going to be after this one, and only here. It's not going to be repeating itself for every instance of the variance measure. It's just going to be there. This works the same way as the rows. You can call it whatever you want, and you can click on whatever you want it to be. So actuals minus budgets, and then you get the same as I have in my measure. And if you want to hide a row, same thing. So right click, hide. It's grayed out, or it should be. And then once you go out, it should hide. See, my laptop doesn't really love this performance-wise. Okay. How can you remove blank rows, and how can you add subcategories? Right now, if we go back to my fields, I'm just gonna go trim this down a little bit. And remove the added columns, because then I get the watermark out. So I just need to take a look at this again. Blank rows and subcategories. Yeah, sorry. Now I have two levels. I have my top row and all my accounts. But if I have a chart of accounts like this in my dimension, and I have multiple levels, which are subcategories, I can add them in between. So let's add in level 2 and 3. So now if I expand my cost of goods, here I have my subcategories on how my chart of accounts are grouped, and I can expand further and then find whatever I have in that category. We have some features over here called hide empty rows. So if you turn that on, it's a premium feature. It's going to trigger a watermark, but if you turn it on, you can see that it works. So this right here is an empty. It doesn't have any values for any of the years. So if I collapse and expand, it's should re-render. There we go. So now it's not there anymore. If I turn it off, it pops back in. So this feature allows you to have a very long list of accounts in your chart of accounts, but you only limit the view to the ones you're interested in looking at. So that was both how to remove blank rows and how to add subcategories. This feature is also something you can add a condition to. So let's say you, for 1 year or one period, don't have any net financial items. So this is blank, but you still want it in to show everyone that it's not forgotten, it's not missing, there's nothing wrong. It just doesn't have any values. Then you can do the same thing here and say that the row level has to be greater than 0 in order to hide. So it means it doesn't hide anything on your top level like this. You get the full structure, but it starts hiding once you drill down into the levels. Yeah. How do you enter edit mode? Well, you find, you find the meatballs menu, the 3 dots, either below or usually above. But if it doesn't have room above, it's not going to be showing above. But now it's here. And you click on edit. And then you can see all the steps you've done. And you can click on one of them. And then it's going to, oh, that wasn't for this. Okay. Let me go into edit mode on this one. So if you click on one step, it's going to show you where this step is applied, and you can do changes to it if you want. So you can rename it or add a formula or change the styling. If you're not happy with it, it should be a total instead. Something like that. And if you want, you can do something like this, right click this one, which already has a style. Let's remove that as a condition. and I want to change the formats to include a $sign. So for that row only, you see we now have a $sign along with the value. Okay, I believe how do you add a step once in the edit section? I'm not sure what you mean by that. But I see we are running out of time, and I have covered most of what I wanted to cover. Is it possible to add comments at the end of a row, for instance, by large fluctuations? Yes, you could. And that's something I could cover when I look into, if I do a webinar on icons and anything like that, because instead of an icon, it could be a text. So if you have variants that are greater than an absolute value of 5%, so 5% positive, 5% negative, something like that, then you could trigger. So if this happens, then state this text or something like that. So you could do that. But then I think I have to round off. If you have any follow-up questions, please send them to us on GitHub. I'm going through and answering everything there anyways. So if we can gather everything in one place, that would be very helpful and very interesting to see your questions as well. Hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully some of you will come back to a follow-up webinar.